The grand wedding of Liam Reynolds and Sophia Bennett was an event to behold. Set in the sprawling gardens of a luxury estate, every detail had been meticulously planned to perfection. Guests in designer attire sipped champagne under strings of twinkling fairy lights, while a live orchestra played soft, melodic tunes in the background. The chatter of happy conversations filled the air as friends and family mingled, taking in the grandeur of the occasion. Liam, the 25-year-old groom, was at the center of it all. With his crisp white tuxedo and confident demeanor, he looked every bit the part of a man who had everything going for him. He basked in the compliments of friends and family, accepting their congratulations with a wide smile. But beneath the charm and polished exterior, Liam carried a sense of entitlement that often bordered on arrogance. As Liam moved through the crowd, joking with his groomsmen and greeting distant relatives, his attention shifted to a gold watch on his wrist, a cherished heirloom passed down by his grandfather, later customized to include his initials. It was a symbol of his family's legacy, wealth, and status, and Liam rarely let it out of his sight. When the cocktail hour began, Liam removed the watch momentarily while adjusting his cufflinks, placing it on the corner of a table near the wedding cake. Distracted by a guest calling his name, he walked away intending to retrieve it shortly. But when he returned a few moments later, the watch was gone. Liam's heart skipped a beat. He scanned the table, moving aside napkins and champagne flutes in growing frustration. The watch, his prized possession, had vanished. "Where is it?" he muttered to himself, his brow furrowed. He called over his best man, Ethan, and explained the situation. "Are you sure you left it here?" Ethan asked, glancing around the crowded room. "Of course I'm sure," Liam snapped, his voice low but tense. "I put it right here. Someone must have taken it." Liam's eyes darted across the room, landing on Marcus, a tall, poised black man standing near the buffet table. Marcus, dressed in a tailored black suit and polished shoes, carried himself with quiet confidence. He appeared to be scanning the room himself, holding a glass of water and speaking softly with another guest. Liam didn't recognize him, which only fueled his suspicions. Ethan hesitated, sensing where Liam's mind was headed. "Liam, don't jump to conclusions. It could have been misplaced." But Liam wasn't listening. Anger and frustration clouded his judgment. "I don't know who he is," Liam muttered, narrowing his eyes at Marcus. "He doesn't look like he belongs here. I bet he knows something about this." "Liam, calm down," Ethan urged, glancing nervously at the guests around them. But Liam had already made up his mind. Liam strode across the room, his footsteps purposeful. The lively conversations around him began to quiet as people noticed his determined expression. By the time he reached Marcus, several guests were already watching, their curiosity piqued. "You there?" Liam called out, his tone sharp and accusatory. Marcus turned toward him, his expression calm but questioning. "Yes." "Did you see a gold watch on that table over there?" Liam demanded, pointing toward the spot near the cake. Marcus raised an eyebrow, his voice steady. "No, I didn't." Liam crossed his arms, his voice growing louder. "Really? Because it's funny how it disappeared, and you're the only person here I don't know. Are you sure you don't know anything about it?" Marcus's expression remained calm, though a flicker of irritation crossed his face. "I'm certain I haven't touched your watch." The room fell silent as more guests turned to watch the unfolding confrontation. Sophia, standing nearby with her bridesmaids, froze in disbelief. "Liam, what are you doing?" she whispered, hurrying to his side. Liam ignored her, his frustration boiling over. "You're saying you didn't see it, but how do I know you're telling the truth? People like you always think they can get away with things." The words landed like a slap in the face, their meaning unmistakable. Gasps rippled through the crowd. Marcus's calm demeanor faltered for a moment, but he quickly regained his composure. "People like me?" he repeated, his voice quieter now but tinged with restrained anger. "What exactly do you mean by that?" Liam shrugged, his arrogance unchecked. "You know what I mean. You don't belong here. This isn't your kind of crowd." Marcus took a step closer, his towering frame intimidating but not aggressive. "I would suggest you rethink your word," he said quietly, his voice firm. "Not for my sake, but for your own." "Liam, stop it," Sophia hissed, tugging at his arm. "You're embarrassing yourself." Liam shrugged her off, his voice rising. Someone has to say it, Sophia. He can't just walk in here and act like he's better than the rest of us. Marcus stared at him, his face a mask of controlled anger. He took a deep breath, refusing to let Liam's words provoke him further. I have nothing to prove to you, he said simply. Before Liam could respond, another voice cut through the tension. Liam, that's enough. The authoritative tone belonged to Daniel Reynolds, Liam's father, a tall, imposing man in his late 50s. Daniel's presence commanded respect. He pushed through the crowd, his face a mixture of anger and disappointment. Dad, Liam began, but Daniel silenced him with a sharp wave of his hand. Not another word, Daniel said firmly. He turned to Marcus, his expression softening. Mr. Hayes, I am so sorry for my son's behavior. I had no idea this would happen. Marcus nodded, his calm exterior returning. Apology accepted, Mr. Reynolds, but perhaps your son should be the one apologizing. Daniel turned back to Liam, his voice cold. Do you even know who this man is? Liam hesitated, his confidence suddenly replaced by unease. No, but This is Marcus Hayes, Daniel said, his voice rising slightly. One of the most successful business tycoons in the city. The man who helped save our company when we were on the brink of financial ruin. Liam's jaw dropped, his face turning pale. The weight of his actions began to sink in as the murmurs of the guests grew louder. Wait, what? Liam stammered. Yes, Daniel continued, his tone sharp. Years ago, when no one else would help me, Mr. Hayes believed in me and loaned me the funds to save our business. Without him, we wouldn't have what we have today. Liam's head hung low as Daniel's words echoed through the room. For the first time, he realized the depth of his mistake. The entire crowd at the wedding stood frozen in stunned silence, their attention fixed on the tense standoff between Liam, his father Daniel, and Marcus Hayes. The weight of Daniel's revelation hung in the air like a storm cloud threatening to break at any moment. Liam, the once confident groom, now stood speechless, his arrogance crumbling under the weight of his father's words. Liam's mouth opened and closed as though he were searching for an explanation, a defense, anything to justify his behavior. But nothing came out. The gravity of his mistake began to settle in, and the realization that Marcus Hayes, the man he had so casually humiliated, was not just a guest, but a pillar of his own family's success, made his cheeks burn with shame. Wait, Liam finally managed to stammer, his voice shaky. You're saying he helped us? Him? Daniel's jaw tightened, his disappointment palpable. Yes, Liam. Marcus Hayes is the reason this wedding is even happening today. Without his help years ago, this family wouldn't have been able to afford anything, let alone this grand event. Daniel turned to address the gathering crowd, his voice steady but tinged with emotion. Some of you may not know this, but there was a time when Reynolds Enterprises was on the brink of bankruptcy. We had taken risks that didn't pay off, and no bank would lend us a dime. I was desperate and ashamed, thinking I had failed my family. That's when I met Marcus Hayes. He barely knew me, yet he believed in my vision and loaned me the money we needed to stay afloat. Without him, I wouldn't have been able to rebuild. Everything we have today is in part thanks to his generosity and faith in us. The guests murmured amongst themselves, shocked by the story. Eyes shifted back to Marcus, who stood silent and composed, his expression unreadable. Sophia, Liam's bride, looked at him with newfound respect, while Liam seemed to shrink under the weight of everyone's gaze. Dad, Liam began weakly. I didn't know. That's the problem, Liam, Daniel snapped, his voice firm but laced with disappointment. You didn't know, and yet you assumed. You accused a man, an honored guest, of stealing without any evidence. And worse, you let prejudice guide your actions. Do you have any idea how disgraceful that is? Liam looked down at his shoes, unable to meet his father's eyes. The guilt was overwhelming, but his father wasn't finished. And let me be clear, Daniel continued, his voice rising slightly. This isn't just about the watch. This is about the way you treated Mr. Hayes. The way you let your own biases blind you. I thought I raised you better than this. Marcus, who had remained quiet throughout Daniel's speech, finally spoke, his voice calm but commanding enough to silence the crowd. Mr. Reynolds, he said, addressing Daniel, While I appreciate your words, I think it's important that Liam hears this from me as well. Daniel stepped aside, his respect for Marcus evident as he gestured for him to continue. All eyes were now on Marcus as he turned to Liam, his piercing gaze unwavering. Liam felt the full weight of Marcus's presence, his 6 feet 3 inches frame towering over him, not just physically but morally. Marcus's demeanor was not one of anger or condescension, but of quiet dignity. It was a look that made Liam feel smaller than he had ever felt in his life. Liam, Marcus began, his voice steady and deliberate. I understand that emotions can run high in situations like this. Losing something valuable can make anyone upset. But the way you chose to handle this was not just inappropriate. It was deeply offensive. Liam flinched, but Marcus didn't let up. You didn't know who I was, and yet you felt entitled to humiliate me in front of everyone here. You assumed the worst about me because of how I look, and you let your prejudice dictate your actions. Do you understand the weight of what you've done? Liam nodded slightly, but Marcus wasn't finished. This isn't about the watch, he continued, echoing Daniel's earlier words. This is about character. It's about the way we treat people, especially those we think are different from us. What you did tonight says more about you than it does about me. The crowd remained silent, hanging on Marcus's every word. Even the orchestra had stopped playing, their instruments resting in their laps as they watched the scene unfold. But I'm not here to humiliate you, Liam, Marcus said, his tone softening slightly. I'm here to teach you something. Life will present you with opportunities to rise above your own ignorance and grow. This is one of those moments. The question is, will you learn from it, or will you continue down the path you're on? Liam finally looked up, his eyes filled with shame and regret. I'm sorry, he said, his voice barely above a whisper. Marcus nodded. But remember, he remained serious. Words are a start, Liam, but actions matter more. If you truly mean it, then show it, not just to me, but to everyone you meet. Let this moment change you for the better. Liam's father Daniel stepped forward, his voice firm but supportive. Liam, this is your chance to do the right thing. Apologize properly and learn from this mistake. I won't tolerate this kind of behavior in our family. Liam took a deep breath, gathering what courage he could. He turned to Marcus, his voice trembling. Mr. Hayes, I can't express how sorry I am for what I said and did tonight. It was wrong, and there's no excuse for it. I've been arrogant and blind to my own ignorance, but I promise you, I'll do everything I can to change. Marcus studied Liam for a moment, then extended his hand. Apology accepted, he said simply, shaking Liam's hand firmly. The crowd erupted into a mix of applause and relieved murmurs. The tension in the room began to dissipate, replaced by a sense of hope and reconciliation. Sophia stepped forward, placing a hand on Liam's arm and whispering, "Thank you for doing the right thing." Daniel turned to Marcus, his expression filled with gratitude. Mr. Hayes, I can't thank you enough for everything, not just for tonight, but for all you've done for our family. I'm deeply sorry for my son's behavior, and I promise you he will learn from this. Marcus smiled faintly, his composure never wavering. Don't thank me, Mr. Reynolds. Your kindness to me in the past has always mattered. I just hope you'll ensure that your son grows into a man who values that same kindness and respect. Daniel nodded solemnly, his respect for Marcus only deepening. The moment felt like a turning point, not just for Liam, but for everyone who had witnessed the confrontation. The ceremony eventually resumed, but the atmosphere had shifted. Conversations were more reflective, and guests who might have judged Marcus earlier now regarded him with admiration. Liam remained quiet for much of the evening, humbled by the experience but determined to make amends, not just to Marcus, but to himself. The wedding ceremony proceeded, but the air still buzzed with the aftershocks of the dramatic confrontation. Guests whispered quietly among themselves, casting occasional glances at Liam, who remained unusually subdued, and at Marcus, who carried himself with his trademark poise and dignity. Liam stood at the altar beside his bride Sophia, his hands trembling slightly as he held hers. He tried to focus on the vows they were exchanging, the promises of love and commitment, but his mind was elsewhere. The shame of what had transpired just moments earlier gnawed at him. The racist comments he had made to Marcus, the baseless accusation of theft, and the crushing realization of who Marcus truly was. These thoughts swirled in his head, overshadowing what should have been the happiest day of his life. As Sophia softly recited her vows, she gave Liam's hand a reassuring squeeze, as if to silently tell him, "We'll get through this." Her words, filled with love and hope for their future, brought a small measure of comfort to Liam's troubled heart. Marcus, seated among the guests with quiet dignity, observed the ceremony with a calm expression. His posture radiated the confidence of a man who knew his worth and refused to be diminished by the ignorance of others. While the events of the evening had shaken the wedding, Marcus had no intention of allowing bitterness to linger. He believed in the power of transformation and hoped that the humbling moment would serve as a catalyst for Liam's growth. After the ceremony, the newlyweds moved into the reception hall for their first dance. Guests applauded as Liam and Sophia swayed to the soft melody of the live band, but Liam's discomfort was palpable. He couldn't shake the feeling that every pair of eyes in the room was judging him. Sophia, ever perceptive, leaned in close during the dance and whispered, "Liam, let it go. What's done is done. You've apologized. Now show everyone you can be better." Her words, though simple, struck a chord. Liam nodded slightly, his resolve hardening. He would not let the day end without taking the first steps toward redemption. As the night wore on and the reception reached its peak, Liam spotted Marcus standing near the bar, engaged in quiet conversation with Daniel. Liam hesitated, fear and shame holding him back, but Daniel's stern yet encouraging glance told him he needed to act. With a deep breath, Liam approached, his steps tentative but determined. "Mr. Hayes," Liam said softly, drawing both Marcus and Daniel's attention. "May I have a word?" "Of course," Marcus replied. Liam glanced nervously at his father, who gave him a small nod before stepping away to give them privacy. Left alone with Marcus, Liam felt the weight of the moment pressing down on him. "I wanted to say something earlier," Liam began, his voice low, "but I didn't know how to find the right words. I know I've already apologized, but I need to say it again. I was wrong, so completely, unforgivably wrong. I let my own ignorance and prejudice guide my actions, and I disrespected you in a way that no one should ever be treated. I don't deserve your forgiveness, but I hope you can find it in your heart to accept my apology." Marcus studied Liam carefully, his deep, thoughtful gaze unwavering. After a moment he spoke, his tone calm but firm. "Liam, what you said and did tonight was deeply hurtful, not just to me, but to everyone who witnessed it. But I believe in second chances. What matters now is not the apology itself, but what you do moving forward. Words are fleeting. Actions show the true measure of a man." Liam nodded earnestly, his shoulders straightening. "I promise you, Mr. Hayes, I'll be different. Tonight has been a wake-up call, and I'll do whatever it takes to become a better person. I'm ashamed of who I was, but I want to change." Marcus extended his hand, his grip firm, and his expression softened by a faint smile. "I'll hold you to that promise," he said simply. Liam exhaled a breath he hadn't realized he was holding. "Thank you," he said quietly, overwhelmed by Marcus's grace. In the weeks following the wedding, Liam began his journey of self-improvement. It wasn't easy. Acknowledging his flaws required humility and courage he hadn't known he possessed. He started by educating himself, reading books and attending seminars on racial equality and the history of systemic racism. He reached out to mentors and leaders in his community, seeking guidance on how to unlearn the biases that had been ingrained in him for so long. Liam also began volunteering at local organizations dedicated to supporting marginalized communities. He spent weekends mentoring underprivileged youth, helping them with their education and career aspirations. Through these experiences, he gained a deeper understanding of the struggles others faced and realized how much he had taken for granted. Most importantly, Liam reached out to Marcus. He sent letters of gratitude, detailing how the confrontation at the wedding had changed his life. Though Marcus rarely responded, he acknowledged Liam's efforts with brief but encouraging notes. Over time, Liam's transformation became evident to those around him. He became more thoughtful, more compassionate, and more aware of the impact of his words and actions. His father Daniel noticed the change and couldn't hide his pride. "You've come a long way, son," he told Liam one evening. "I think Marcus would be proud of the man you're becoming." Months later, Liam reached out to Marcus once more, requesting a meeting. Marcus, curious about the young man's progress, agreed. They met at a small cafe in the city, a humble and quiet setting far removed from the grandeur of the wedding. When Marcus arrived, Liam stood to greet him, his demeanor noticeably more humble and respectful. "Thank you for meeting me, Mr. Hayes," Liam said sincerely. Marcus smiled faintly and took a seat. "Call me Marcus," he replied. "What can I do for you, Liam?" Liam took a deep breath. "I just wanted to thank you, not just for forgiving me, but for changing my life. Your grace that night, it showed me what true strength and dignity look like. I've been working hard to become a better person, and I owe that to you." Marcus nodded, his expression thoughtful. "I'm glad to hear that. Growth isn't easy, but it's necessary. Remember, the journey doesn't end here. Keep challenging yourself and, more importantly, help others along the way." Liam smiled, his gratitude shining through. "I will. Thank you, Marcus, for everything." The two men parted ways, their interaction brief but profound. Liam left the cafe feeling a renewed sense of purpose, while Marcus walked away with quiet satisfaction, knowing that his message had reached someone who truly needed it. Liam's transformation became a testament to the power of humility, education, and the willingness to change. His story inspired those around him to confront their own biases and strive for a more inclusive and understanding world. Marcus, ever the quiet leader, continued his philanthropic efforts, supporting communities and individuals in need. He never sought recognition, but his actions spoke louder than any words ever could. Years later, at another family gathering, Daniel Reynolds raised a toast, his voice filled with pride and emotion. "To Marcus Hayes, the man who not only saved my business, but also helped my son become the man he was meant to be. Thank you for showing us all what true kindness and strength look like." Marcus smiled and raised his glass, his eyes meeting Liam's across the room. In that moment, no words were needed. Their journey, though born out of conflict, had become a story of redemption, growth, and the unshakable power of grace.